this brother, whoever he is, says that's why we must be absolutely distinguished. I don't know, it's kind of janky English, but you get the point. He wants to make sure that we have a all exclusive ethnic identifier separate from the Caribbean and African immigrants and define our own exclusive identity. So he's begging that we come up with our own exclusive identity where it's no longer Black Americans. Yeah, but they're Black Americans. Okay, African Americans. Yes, but they're African Americans. Oh, we're blacks, but they're black. And it gets confusing. So when we say ADOS, when we say American freedmen, when we say FBA, there is no confusion. If it is, it's there just for 10 seconds. Because once we say no, we go back to slavery in this country. You don't. I mean, that's it. The confusion is gone. So this guy, the maker of this video, was begging for a new terminology that identifies us separate. Look what he did. He said the Caribbeans and he said the African immigrants before Tariq, before ADOS. This is called delineation. This is called disaggregation. This is called he's being divisive, whatever that means. Instead of including everybody else as part of us and being replaced little by little everywhere in the media and politics. So he didn't use the talking points of today. They're taking jobs, they're doing this, undermining that. That's what we learned, right? He was more concerned with being replaced, okay? Which is a good angle, interesting angle. This is how Native Americans do. They know how to define themselves based on their ancestry, not skin tone or phenotype. He sounds like us. He sounds like us. He just 4 years earlier. But he also understood the skin tone and the phenotype doesn't work. Ancestry, slavery legacy, that's what's going to distinguish us from each other. This dude was spot on. Only black people who have African slaves in their DNA can be considered part of the black community. So he was on it. He was just using the wrong terminology to define enslavement in this country. It's American slaves, brother. Okay, but we get what you're trying to say. And you were very damn close. If we don't do that, we will be replaced. If we don't do that, we will be completely replaced by these new blacks by the end of this century. So who can say he's wrong? All right, so we're going to go into part two. Part two is going to have more clips of people talking. It's going to be more entertaining. So part one was just setting the stage, letting you know what type of information you're about to stop. Sit down. So this part two that he did, or at least uploaded, this is still before Tariq Nasheed and ADOS. So even part two, that's 2 years later than part one, is still 2 years before ADOS and FBA. And I made a video called The New Black a while ago in early 2015. Now I was actually trying to find that video. So let's see if this is the actual maker of these videos because it should be on his channel. So I'm gonna see if he just uploads these videos or he's the yeah oldest 10 years ago. Yeah. So I don't see the new blacks here. So I'm not sure. I don't. I'm not. I don't believe this was the video. I don't believe this is the channel that actually is responsible for that video. The videos we're watching. I believe they just uploaded them. But the new black is supposed to be 15 years. Yeah, definitely did that. But some folks disagree with. So some folks disagree with what I have to say in this video, and one particular guy named Mr. Smooth decided to leave that message. So can't really see. You see, he got the music in the background. I can't play the videos. If I can remember, the guy is a fan of. Okay, so I'm not surprised. Okay, but we didn't see the comment, but it was probably something negative that we're all in this together. But I want you to pay close attention to what he said. Black people all over the world are the same. Okay. Interesting angle he about to go with this. If all black people are the same, by this logic, black people are interchangeable, right? And if black people are the same, that also means we are replaceable. So I'm going to explain in this video the consequences of putting all black people in the same group with deep details and exclusive information. In the mainstream media, we often hear and read stories about the growing number of black students accepted in the universities, the most prestigious universities. And many in the black communities stupidly assume that these black students accepted in Ivy League are FBAs, just like us. Just fast forward. Okay. Well, you see, so in 2004, 21 years ago, an article posted in the New York Times exposed the truth behind these facts. In 2004, this is 20 years before where we are now. It was Henry Louis Gates Jr., chairman of African and African American Studies in Harvard, who was the first to signal these alarming numbers. Gates stated the fact that out of all 530 black students, only less than 30% are in reality FBA DOS. All the rest are African and Caribbean immigrants, and these revelations put Harvard University in a very embarrassing situation. Okay, so this is what I want you to see. So this article is in 2004. It says top colleges take more blacks, but which ones? So even white people, even the New York Times understood everybody, but I think FBA does. I think we were the last to realize that everybody black ain't the same because we were fooled with this. Oh, give me 1 second. black and nothing. So in diversity push, this sounds like DEI. Top universities enroll black immigrants, black immigrants. So when you go inside this is the Washington Post, by the way. In diversity push, top universities enroll black immigrants. The nation's most elite colleges and universities are bolstering their black. God, why I can't fucking hiccuping? The nation's most elite colleges and universities are bolstering their black student population by enrolling large numbers of immigrants from Africa, the West Indies, and Latin America, according to a study published recently in the American Journal of Education. Immigrants who make up 13% of the nation's college age black population account for more than a quarter of black students at Ivy League and other selective universities. According to the study produced by Princeton University and the University of Pennsylvania, the large representation of black immigrants developed as schools focus shifted from restitution for decades of excluding black Americans from campuses to embracing wider diversity. The study's authors said the more elite the school, the more black immigrants are enrolled. Wait a minute. So how did we benefit from this? So the article just said decades of excluding FBAs from campuses to embracing non-FBAs, new blacks. This was a nothing burger, but it was a trick bag because they were being introduced as black. But how did this help us out? How did this repair what happened to us? You're supposed to enroll us. Yeah, so this is definitely replacing us. That was something we're supposed to benefit from. But they start putting these new blacks there and say, hey, look, hey, man, you know what? If they can do that, if they can say, hey, we're going to make it right, what we did to you guys exclusively, we're going to make it right by repaying somebody else that had nothing to do with that. That is setting the stage for reparations for another people who have not experienced what we experienced in this country. This is setting the stage to finally give out reparations, but it be for the new blacks. Interesting. In other words, African Americans are no longer the majority of black students in Harvard, despite the fact that we are the majority in the United States. Interesting. So every time you hear in the news that 8 or 10% of black students are accepted in Ivy League, they're not talking about FBA DOS. Okay. So hopefully the music's not there.
Level, our elite educational institution, is the blacks there are primarily black multiracials and black immigrants. So if you go to Harvard, if you go to Yale, if you go to Columbia, probably less than 20% of the blacks are African American and 80% of...
Okay, so this is Professor Kevin Brown. Okay, you can see, I'm going to share my screen now. On the right side, I got this full video right here. It's 12 minutes. His name is Professor Kevin Brown. So Professor Kevin Brown, according to Tethers, he's being divisive. Well, he was doing this before Tariq Nasheed and Yvette. So is he our new leader? Now, okay. So there we are. So you see, we don't have leaders. We have representation. And representation is any one of us with the right information. The people who are bold enough and the more studied step into the forefront and speak on our behalves. That becomes representation. And a lot of times representation is looked at as leader. Malcolm X was not a leader. Malcolm X was the Nation of Islam representative. Okay, he was not the leader. But white media always called him the leader. on purpose to cause division amongst the ranks. All right, knowing that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad was the leader, white media will constantly call Malcolm X the leader to stir up division and also to build this ego in Malcolm X as he's the leader. Like, so they're trying to like gaslight him to believe that he is the leader or he's in leadership because he's representing verbally. He's the physical verbal expression of the Nation of Islam talking points. All right. So these tethers are trying to use a white supremacist tactic amongst us and say that our representatives are our put that back are our leaders.
They were going to be black immigrants or black multiracials.
In reality, FBAs represent 2% or maybe 3% of all students in Princeton. Okay. While the overwhelmingly, I think it should have said that, of black students in Ivy League schools are mostly black immigrants. Okay, so all this is just an African genius, right? African genius, in America going to an Ivy League school. Now, we're not saying, at least I'm not saying they're undeserving. Like they are deserving of these, enrollments because they are smart. Like they have the education to enroll in these prestigious schools. We don't like it when they're used as chess pieces to misrepresent us, to give us a false sense of, hey guys, you're on your way. It's like, no, we're not on our way. The Nigerians are on their way. Talk to us when you're allowing us in those prestigious schools. And I do agree that we should come up with a way to have our own prestigious schools where we have equivalent, research, equivalent tools, equivalent books and education, and enroll ourselves. So I do agree with that, but it's more difficult than that because we've been locked out of the wealth. So the money it takes to have that research, to have these facilities, these labs, in these prestigious schools that we can build we're like behind the ball. Okay, we got to use our own personal income to get this done, which is, it's definitely some obstacles. Let me just fast forward. So they're just going over this African genius, right? Dude is very, very brilliant, articulate. Mom comes from a good background. They don't have the legacy of slavery behind them. They don't have the legacy of, our legacy in this country. Like they don't have the history we have. So, and it's no fault to him and his family, but they don't understand they're being used as chess pieces to undermine FBA dots. They don't know that. Not at this time, right? This is some years ago. But eventually they start to borrow the white talking points, white supremacists from the success they were allowed to have. They started to, and by the way, this is in New York, 2015. Okay, 10 years ago. So they're singing and whatever they're doing. So this is another black immigrant, smart young woman who's enrolled in some Ivy League school, deservingly so. She's not there because of some other stuff. As you can see, we have already been replaced. Okay. He just being sarcastic. Where I live, Northern California, there's barely any African or Caribbean immigrants there, which I be trying to tell like a lot of these Africans and immigrants, like, bro, y'all not as well spread as you think you are. Like a lot of FBAs have zero interaction with y'all, you know? And yes, when they do see y'all, they're gonna think y'all Della Geechee, part of the Geechee people. And then when you say, no, I'm not that, you're gonna confuse the hell out of them. What type of black you are? I'm the new black. Okay, so now here's the interesting. So we got a date. We got Obama. We got 2004. This is the interesting here because he was promoted as potentially being the first black president. Again, this word black in this country historically, it was an all exclusive term for us, for descendants of slavery, right? It was just us because we were the more just the black people in this country, right? Just to be real, we were the only blacks in this country. Other pockets of immigrants was a small number, wasn't even worth, what I mean, mentioning or acknowledging. They were so tiny. But as they grew in numbers after definitely in the 2000s, they're in the millions now. Now that word black is not all exclusive, it's now all inclusive. So now there are the black immigrants, or I keep saying black, but the new blacks that came to this country, they're now being tagged to the word black. Now the confusion is starting to happen. So now Obama is the first black, or he's going to be the first black president, but he's from Kenya. So we're like confused. We like, well, shouldn't he be called the first African president? So it's kind of confusing FBA does. And I remember, man, back in those days, a lot of black folks were arguing that Obama wasn't black. And what they simply meant was he's not a descendant of slaves, but they didn't have a term. So they just said he wasn't black. It was causing confusion because he is black right now. So we're like, what do you mean he's not black? So people were having a hard time explaining how he's not black, but they would eventually clear the smoke when they say he's not a descendant of slaves. Then we'd be like, okay, I know what you mean. It was still a confusing conversation about how all inclusive the word black, African American, and black American has become. Please see, so he's not one of us. Okay. All right. Okay, so Stanley Crouch tried to explain why Obama, contrary to what the media said, couldn't be considered as African American. So yeah, you had people coming out early in the early 2000s. What Obama isn't? Black like me. This date is 2006. This is, I believe, 20 something years before an Yvette and Tariq. So this video is going, this exposure, this expose is going to embarrass and shame a lot of these tethers because they like to pin it to Tariq. Now we got dates, we got names. 2000, we got Professor Kevin Brown. We got Deborah Dickerson, who were early with this. Look, when he was running for the U.S. Senate of Illinois in 2004, 21 years ago, his Republican opponent, Alan Keyes, attacked him for not being one of us. Listen.
Are of the same race, but not from the same heritage. Do you feel you are more personally in touch with African Americans than he, because you are a descendant of slaves?
I simply observed a fact. I didn't make any conclusions from that fact. I wouldn't do so.
Okay, so he observed the fact. So he knew then, running against Obama, he ain't black. He's not FBA. I am. He's a descendant of Africa. Kenya. He's Kenyan. So as you can see, there was no confusion amongst the intellectuals of the FBA community. It was confusion amongst us laymen and laywomen. All right. Hmm. Okay. Oh yeah. So this is a good one. Again, look, this is 2007. So not only does the FBA DOS community does not see these new blacks as one of us, but even white Americans acknowledge that these new blacks aren't one of us. Like again, it's a trick. It's a trick bag. It's a nothing burger. They're trying to confuse us, and they're trying to mislead us with misrepresentation, saying this person is one of you. And when this person doesn't have her historical ties, like she said earlier, where'd she go? Listen.
The issue that you're having is we don't see ourselves as one of you.
Okay, so that's what's going on. So these people who are being propped up in our face as one of you, they don't see themselves as one of us. So none of their talking points, their aims, agendas, their goals, their accomplishments, nothing aligns with us. We want equality, justice. We want those type of things. They're like, hey, we don't want that. We want money and recognition. Okay, good girl.
Old state capitol in Springfield, Illinois, where Abraham Lincoln made his stirring House Divided speech. How historic. At a building made famous by the man who freed the slaves, Obama isn't the descendant of slaves. His father emigrated from Kenya in
Okay, so make that clear. His Obama isn't. Freed
the slaves. Obama isn't the descendant of slaves.
Okay, Obama isn't a descendant of slaves. So you see how, so listen, family, this is very deep. So everybody, in order to distinguish the new blacks from us, without the confusion, without seeing black, African, American, because those were confusing terms and it wasn't getting the point across. So everyone, including white people, had to say descendants of slaves to draw the separation, to be unique, to be all exclusive. So they all kept saying descendants of slaves. The white man said it, the black man said it. Everybody is using the term descendants of slaves to draw a line between the new blacks and the FBA DOS. Okay, so obviously it's going to click. Descendants of slaves, that's DOS, that's DOS, okay? Descendants of slaves. That's DOS. That's descendants of slaves. So we got 21 years earlier. We got 18 years earlier. We got a white man saying DOS as a separating
made famous
term.
by the man who freed the slaves. Obama isn't the descendant of slaves. His father emigrated from Kenya in 1959, and his mom is the Swiss Miss Girl. Some are even claiming that the senator has not lived the, quote, black experience, and it may have...
You see? So descendants of slaves, we have a different experience than the new blacks. And although we can be cool and cordial and, build alliances, we can't act like they had the black experience. Just like we haven't had the Jamaican experience, the Nigerian experience, the Ghanaian experience. We don't have those experiences, and we're not going to cosplay like we do.
affect his support in the African-American community. Here to explain is columnist for Salon.com and author of the book, The End of Blackness.
So he said in the African-American community, brother. How about just say, because you said Obama is not a descendant of slaves. Why you ain't say Obama is not African-American? You see, he couldn't have said that because he is. So there's no African-American community. There is the DAS community. So just go back to that term so there's no more confusion. Say, he's not part of the DAS, the Descendants of Slaves community. So now look at Deborah Dickerson. Again, this is 2007. So I showed you a couple people. The Republican for Illinois who ran against Obama in 2004. He said Obama's not a descendant of slaves. I showed you Professor Kevin Brown. That showed that he's not black. The new blacks are not us in this country. They're not us. They're not us, period. And now I'm going to show you Deborah Dickerson in 2007, which, if I know a little bit of math, I know 2007 is a lot closer to the year 2000, the millennial bug, than it is the YK2 bug, than it is 2025, which is Tariq. Okay, so these folks were on it early. So the question is, are these folks our leaders? Because they hit on it way earlier than Tariq Nasheed. Are these folks our leaders?
Deborah Dickerson. Ms. Dickerson, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Is Barack Obama black?
No, he's not. In the American political context, black means the son of West African, the descendant of West African slaves brought here to labor in the United States. It's not a put down. It's not to say that he hasn't suffered. It's not to say that he doesn't have a glorious lineage of his own. It's just to say that he and I, who am descended from West African slaves brought to America, we are not the same. Being black, so he's a brother, and he's also a person who has adopted the role of being black. So he's a brother, but he's an adopted brother. And the significance of this, he's a beloved adopted brother. The significance
so he's like a redheaded stepchild. You can slap him around a little bit and nobody's going to care.
But we love him just the same.
Okay, all right. But so it sounds to me like you are judging blackness, not on the color of someone's skin, but on the content of their character.
No, it's not the content of our character, it's the content of our history and our culture. And what we're doing by calling him black is obliterating the culture of his Kenyan father.
You see? So, like you said, Cobra and white folks just laughing because they like, huh? What? But they know. They know. It's not that hard to follow. I sound like Young Jeezy. They know. Okay. Look. The Los Angeles Times, is Obama the new black? So now we got a term, okay? Now we got an all-inclusive term for black immigrants, because we can't use the word black because they don't use the word black. She said, I'm not black in any way possible. Listen.
You know how African Americans would say, oh, black writer, black creator, black artist, black lawyer, black doctor, black woman in STEM? No, when we come to this country, it's immigrant or nationality, maybe our careers next, and then whatever else comes after.
So they don't even call themselves black. So when we say black, we got to use it in quotation. So we're going to use it like it was used in 2000, right? This Los Angeles Times. They're called the new black. All right. So now you got the new blacks and you got the tethers. Okay. So, but it is what it is. All right. Anyway, let's go. Decoding the debate over the blackness of Barack Obama. This is big. What's this? This is what? The New York Times. So this was known. Our black leaders, our black leaders, or the so-called people in leadership, right? That's not our black leaders, but they want to be in leadership positions. These folks knew about this. So when they hear Tariq and Yvette coming 20 years later, they already were prepared for that. And that's why they have these shills and then this strong defense, this strong pushback to downplay them. Hey, Tariq is a former this. Yvette, oh no, Tone, no. Like they were prepared. Oh, Dr. Claude Anderson, he's a quack. Like they were prepared to come against the inevitable. The inevitable was that FBA DOS were going to rise up and say, no, call us something unique. Matter of fact, we're going to call ourselves something unique, and that's it. So when you say, hey, black guys, stand up, we're going to be sitting down. And all those new blacks can stand up. But until you say FBA dies, stand up, we will be seated. Until you say freedmen stand up, we will remain seated. Every other black, every other new black will be standing up. We will be the only people seen as black sitting down until we are addressed correctly. How is their Black Americans experience? Okay, who's this?
Always been true, but it's maybe more true now. So if there's change, that change is probably.
I can't play it because he got that music in the background, and that music flags me. Historically, the definition of being black in America has always been tied with the descendants of slaves, Das. So he's saying it over and over and over, but it's not connecting, right? That's who we are. We're the descendants. So he kept saying we need a new terminology that's all distinctive, all exclusive, that's clear for us. He's saying it over and over and over, but doesn't realize, dude, that is the term, descendants of slaves. In reality, African Americans are more than just a race. We are an ethnic group that shares a unique culture, history, heritage, ancestry, and legacy. So right now he's hitting on important things. That is literally called ethnogenesis. So you'll see a lot of people back in this time, 10 years ago, they will say everything but ethnogenesis because that wasn't a popular, term. That's kind of like a fancy word that seems to be like in the science communities, So so the term wasn't around, but he pretty much explained it. Ethnic group, ethnogenesis. How would you define race and okay, so let's get past this white guy. Membership of an ethnic group tends to be defined by a shared cultural heritage, ancestry, history, language, or physical appearance, ethnogenesis. And at that time, Obama was struggling to get the black vote. He was trailing behind Hillary Clinton among FBA DOS voters. But what changed the game is when, hold on. So this that slick stuff. And what changed, let's get to it. Wait, do I got this one on speed? Yeah, it's on speed. Let me do it a little faster. This is going too slow. But what changed the game is when we discovered that Obama married a woman from FBA DOS, okay? Michelle Robinson. So in a nutshell, because this is a very long video, in a nutshell, Michelle Robinson, the narrative got swung on her. So a lot of Republicans, they took a bad angle and not understanding like FBA does, like how we get down. So when they were attacking Obama, he was left to his own to fend for himself. So we understood him to be Kenyan, right? And new black. But Michelle Robinson, she was clearly FBA does. So when the right wings, right, extremist supporters start to attack Michelle Robinson, now they are attacking us because she's not only FBA DOS, but she's a woman, okay, a grown woman. So that's what made us support Obama through defending Michelle Robinson. Now we care to see her win now. Okay, so that's how that's how the video explains how Obama got his support from FBA DOS. Okay, it was through the attacks of Michelle Robinson, who is later known as Michelle Obama. So see some time there. Let's fast forward. Anyway, like this is clips about them coming at her. Obama spoke. So he said, at this point, we're no longer questioning Obama's identity, and if he's FBA dies, we're now just supporting his wife. So this is Stanley. Crouch. Let me slow. Hope the music is not playing.
That we understood exactly what
He's playing the music. All right, can't do it. So anyway, he's acknowledging the same thing I just said. Like Obama was done until they started to attack his wife. Reverend James White. So he started to show how, hey, look, I'm down with you guys. I'm in the black, FBA Dodge church. I got an FBA Dodge wife. I mean, everything about this dude. Hindsight, I'm starting to realize like some people were right, or it seems they were right when they were saying Obama was like an implant, like he was a plant. He was a plant. Like his whole life is fake. You know what I mean? Basically, like not fake, but staged. You know, he just so happens to be with an FBA Dodge woman, right? He just so happens to go to a real, authentic FBA Dodge church. Reverend Wright is talking that civil rights, black power stuff, but it doesn't but you see Obama, like what, like the contradiction was for us, but like, how do you go to that church and nothing that Reverend Wright is preaching rubs off on you? Like he's against white supremacy, he's against systemic racism. Obama ain't against none of that. So we like, how did you go to that church? And so it's almost like maybe they paid. I'm speculating now. Maybe they dropped some money off in that church. I'm like, you act like Obama went here. Is music being played?
The bill calls for all Americans to back what he calls a turning point in history.
So I believe that was probably the Immigration Act. Yeah, look, Ellis Island.
Johnson gave a short speech to those that had come to witness the signing.
This bill that we will sign today is not a revolutionary bill. It does not affect the lives of millions.
To those that had come to witness the
Look,
signing.
I told you, I told you, 1965. This was the Immigration Act. I knew it. Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965.
Turning point in American immigration policy. European immigrants were given a yearly quota of 149,667 people, while Asian and African immigrants faced quotas of 2,990 and 1,400 people, respectively. Shortly after Kennedy's assassination, the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 was proposed by Representative Emanuel Seller and co-sponsored by Senator Philip Hart. It was also supported by Senator Ted Kennedy. Representative Seller, himself the grandson of immigrants and a strong opponent of the 1924 Immigration Act, had once said that one of the things he cared about passionately was immigration law, and he thought that the bill would help to end discrimination due to place of birth.
People who opposed it in 1965 to a good extent wanted to keep the ethnic makeup of America consistent and without any drastic changes.
The 1965 Immigration Act also had a huge negative impact on FBA Dodge community as well. Okay. So, yeah, so basically he's suggesting or he's concluding that all the benefits, that we were supposed to receive from the 1964 Civil Rights Act, a year later, it was anchored onto all of these immigrants from all backgrounds, black, white, Hispanic, Asian. So we couldn't even we were the only ones locked out of 100 years of wealth and opportunities. And we were the only ones where our businesses were destroyed deliberately, where they built highways through our affluent cities. We were the only ones to be denied of all of these stimulus checks, right? Since 1860 all the way down to 1960. But somehow new people come to this country and benefit from everything that we were deprived of. Okay. So I think, was it Tariq Nasheed that said this? He said, you know what? We should drop out of all of those things that were supposedly for us only, the DEIs, or as a result of 100 years of systemic racism. He said we should pull back out of all of that stuff, because he was like, how would they justify running these programs if we're out of it? Because remember, all of those programs are in existence because of what happened to us. So that was the justification for all of these different DIs and affirmative action things. So if we get out of it, if we pull up out of those things, because we're benefiting little to none anyway. So we pull up out of those things. He said those programs were crash and fall because it would be no justification to keep funding these programs because the LGBTQIA plus community, those programs are not for them. These single white unfortunate women, those programs wasn't for them because of the little stuff they endured. It wasn't for immigration. So we just pulled out completely of these programs. You can't justify these things to exist. Okay, so here we go. Let's go back. What did that say? Hispanic and Asian immigrants who never participated in the civil rights movement strongly benefited from the Immigration Act of 1965. And Asians, yep, facts. Year when, yeah, okay, so, okay.
Politics. The influence of the Hispanic voting bloc, which was virtually non-existent and powerless before the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, has become ever more apparent, especially in the 2012 presidential election.
So, but black people, yeah, so he was basically saying like the Hispanic, like, I guess, influence in politics were non-existent until after 1965. So this is just showing how Latinos had outnumbered white Americans in California and definitely outnumbered us. Where our number at? Here we go. 2.4. Yeah, but I don't got a problem with this at all. As long as they're legal, no issues. Okay, so this is the guy, Hispanic guy, just flexing, popping his collar about how they became the majority in California. Okay, so all this right here, this right here is just gaslighting. The maker of the video, that wasn't a good argument right there. Okay, so this was not a good argument with these videos. Well, Dr. Claw, obviously, but the other ones, no. Immigration March 2010. Who know about this? That's Cornel West and Jesse Jackson were at the Immigration March in 2010. Funny.
Feminist gay rights groups and those who are defending immigrants have come and
Okay, so now listen to this. When racist, conservatives, right wingers are forced to tell the truth, they tell the truth. Listen.
the black civil rights experience.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that because I think it's one of the most important points of the book. I mean, I think the way liberals have treated blacks like children, and many of their policies have been harmful to blacks. At least they got the beneficiary group right. We do have to, I mean, we shouldn't. There is the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow laws. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortions, but that's, or gays who want to get married to one another. That's what civil rights has become for much of the left. They dropped the blacks after 5 minutes.
Immigrant rights are not civil rights?
No, I think civil rights are for blacks. No, I think civil rights are for blacks.
Republicans don't do something with immigration, and if Republicans are so far away from Latinos, they're going to lose not only this election, they might lose the White House for generations.
The future.
And Texas to turn
that's why
from
the
red to
Democrats
blue.
are dropping the blacks and moving on to the
They're not
Hispanics
dropping the
because they're a
blacks. They're not dropping
larger
the
group of Hispanics now.
Hey man, and Coulter. Hey yo, when you push them to be honest, they are eloquently honest. You dig? They dropped the blacks after 1 year. It's 1964. Here you go, blacks. Here you go, FBA dies. Here you go, Civil Rights Act. But goodbye. Let's go, new blacks and Latinos and wherever else. Okay, so the author of this video is saying the difference between the influx of Latino immigrants and Asian immigrants and Indian immigrants is that they don't look like us. So they really can't represent us. They can't justify representing us. They can't fake to represent us. But he was saying, but those new blacks that come over here, they're more dangerous because they come, they don't got to, put on makeup for blackface. They come already blackface. And it's permanent.
To be residing in the U.S. and apparently at an uptick, comprising 3% of the U.S.-born population, yet hold a majority when it comes to new visas. So why is that, and just what that immigration has looked like over the past few decades?
Today, there are about 1.1 million black African immigrants to the U.S., among the largest group of immigrants to the United States, having grown 200% in the 80s and 90s, over 100% in the 2000s. They reside in major metropolitan areas, particularly like here in the districts.
The diaspora is growing. According to the Migration Policy Institute, instability in some African countries has been a chief motivating factor.
We've been trying to tell y'all tethers, like, yo, you have been relatively small numbers. So when they say, hey, man, we were here during Jim Crow, we were here during chattel slavery, bro, you were here, but barely visible, man, my boy. Barely invisible. I'm sorry, barely visible. You were here, but barely visible. I'm sure there was a black person in Nazi Germany somewhere. Okay. I'm sure there was a black person in Hiroshima somewhere, FBA. What they gotta do, man? That person is a small, tiny, invisible minority. All right, you guys were small in this country. You made up nothing, not even worth mentioning. 20,000, 4,000 total, and then like they said, 200% jump in the 2000s. Now you're at 1 million deep. Like, stop. But in 1990, the passing of the new Immigration Act under President George H. Bush and sponsored by Republican Charles Schumer changed everything. Okay.
Thank you very much for coming, everybody. Ed Derwinski, and also Senator Kennedy and Senator Thurmond, Congressman Morrison. In any event, welcome to the Immigration Act of 1990. It is the most comprehensive reform of our immigration laws in 66 years.
Sir.
Now, I ain't gonna lie. I wasn't really aware of this 1990 Immigration Act, and that probably explains why they came so numerous after that. Because after the 1965 Immigration Act, you still didn't see a large influx of new blacks here. You don't see the numbers really increase exponentially until like the 90s or after the 90s. So that's interesting. I gotta look up this act.
There we go. Well done.
And then we got the lottery visa, which is for anybody. The lottery visa could be for an intellectual in that country or a homeless man, basically. Okay, but I think they were saying like most of these lottery visas were aimed at the new blacks. Yeah, so at that point, this country, we only accepted obviously like their brain drain, right? They're most intelligent at there, but the lottery allows for anybody to come, like literally anybody. Mhm. Yeah, so that's why, it's a head start. They come over here as an elitist class, and they compare their elitist class to the whole populace of FBA dots, which is retarded. That's something these tethers will go ahead and make a point. We'll try. So let me skip past some of this stuff.
An education.
I can't play the music in the background. It's going to flag me.
Africa for green.
Okay, so here they come. Okay, there we go. So now this brother was so up in advance. Not only did he speak about ethnogenesis without the actual name, he's also going into brain drain in Africa. As all those new blacks pour over here, Africa suffers. So it goes back to how can Pan-Africanism be a real thing when their countries are failing because they are more concerned with Pan-Americanism? They're trying to come over here. We're trying to go over there, ideology wise, right? But they're trying to come. They said Pan-African. Are you crazy? We're coming to America. We're coming to America, Eddie Murphy. Any music?
Yeah, South Africa.
I can't play it. All right. So anyway, as you can see, he was on it. He was on the brain drain early. This is 8 years ago. Okay. He said, by bringing the best and brightest Africans to America, they automatically keep African countries poor forever. And that's what I've been saying. It's like, yo, this ain't. So how can we ever unite when your homeland will always be underdeveloped because your best minds, your most skilled people are in America making this country greater? The emergence of highly educated African community in America will create a huge problem for African Americans in the long run. Yep, a problem that will impact the Black community like never before, and we're witnessing that right now. Just off the rhetoric.
And there is no question that many African Americans feel they are still.
He's still playing the music, so I can't play it. But anyway, you see a lot of FBA dots is like starting to see, okay, but white conservatives always push back these arguments by comparing. Okay, so this is what I'm telling you. I'm telling you, look, white conservatives, basically white supremacists, use these talking points and these tethers. They come behind and they borrow the same talking points. So they throw the rock and hide their hands like, what? So throwing the rock will be borrowing these throwing the rock will be equivalent to borrowing these talking points of white supremacists and hiding your hand like, what? We ain't team white supremacy. The hell you're not. The hell you're not. You are team white supremacy, my boy. And we ain't gonna forgive that. We'll never forgive that. So let's see if the video won't have the music behind it.
Back in the book segment tonight, a follow-up to my talking points memo on why some African Americans are failing in the marketplace. It's mostly about poor education, fractured families, and a culture that does not prepare folks to compete in the competitive marketplace. To make that point, I compared African Americans to Asian Americans. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, unemployment for Asians, 4.5%.
Okay, so now you know you can't do this, right? You can't compare an elitist group, the best of their brains, their most skilled populace, right? Or a portion of their more skilled populace to all of us over here. The skilled, the unskilled, the ex-felons, the crackheads, they're complaining, they are comparing their elitist class to our mixture of everybody. Like I said, the dropouts, the drug addicts, the alcoholics, the homeless, the ex-felons, the current felons, coupled with some of our elitists, coupled with some of our medium educated. You dig? They're comparing their top, tippy top to all of us. Why don't you go compare all of Asians? And it's going to be higher than 11. Okay?
10.4% for blacks, 5.3% for whites. Out of wedlock births, 17% for Asians.
So again, they're comparing their elitists over here.
29.
Okay, so like you said, so at first, this was a great point. This was a great point. So at first, they're white supremacists, right? We're undermining us by comparing us to Asians and Indians, you know, non-colored folks across the world. But as the new blacks came to this country, right? The influx in this country, they start to compare us to them. Now, again, these are highly selected immigrants. The Asians are highly selected. These are people with super high IQs, very much educated before they came over here. Okay, keep in mind, family, that these folks are educated by their governments. So they come over here already educated. They come over here ready to work, plug and play. They come over here, plug and play. We don't waste our funds, doesn't waste 1 cent on them to educate and train them. They come here fully educated, fully trained, and they're trying to compare that to us. The masses of us are not fully educated or fully trained, right? So then they start to do it with the African immigrants, the new blacks. Watch this undermining stuff. So white conservatives, again, these are white conservatives who keep doing this, right? Which is almost equivalent to white supremacists. Okay. And now you have these tethers borrowing these talking points of the 2000s from white supremacists, but then get mad when we link them right along with their zaddy. Listen.
The main point, the evidence against it, I think, is that black African immigrants who are often darker than American blacks, thrive in America. If there's so much racism, how do Nigerians do so well? They out-earn the average white American.
Well, because they are motivated and they'll do jobs that other people
They have
do,
two parents,
right?
And they were raised differently.
Okay, you see? So now, they're not talking about Nigeria that we know, that floating slum, the people who go fishing in oil, right? Okay, they're not talking about those Nigerians that make $2 a day, the ones that traffic, the ones that kidnap kids, you dig? The ones that IQs are like 65. They're not talking about those Nigerians. They're talking about the elitist class that come over here already wealthy, rich, and highly educated. They're comparing all of us to that elitist group. How about just compare our elitist group to the Nigerians elitist group and the Asian elitist group? How about just do that? And that's more of a fair comparison. And now we can sit back and, pretty much deal with the results. But we are running circles around both of them. Okay. Majority of Asia, Chinese, are very uneducated. The majority of Nigeria are very uneducated. They do not go to school over there. Okay. Going to grade school in Nigeria and China is like winning the lottery. So now tethers will bring up the same talking point. How come the Nigerians are doing so well? Okay, I can answer that. So the white guy try to focus on is color based. Look how dark they are. They darker than y'all. No, it's not color, man. And so tethers, you see that? How highly they speak of Nigerians. They will not do that with us. You know why? Because we fought against them. We deleted them in the war that mattered the most to them, which is called the Civil War. Okay, when they seen the people who they once enslaved and felt like they were less than a human, right? When they seen those people put their foot on their necks, literally put their foot on their necks and said, don't move or I'll delete you. That was a nightmare they could never erase out of their minds. The people who they enslaved are now, they're at their mercy. Okay. The owners are at the mercy of the enslaved. Their life is right there. The person they enslaved can literally take them out and nothing will happen. So our enslaved people were at this point freedmen. Our freedmen were popping their collar. Shut up before what you say? We were popping our collar as we chased those cowards down. Okay, for that reason, they can never, ever, ever, ever forgive us. That is not a history that a tether has had with them, right? No, that's our unique history. And for them, for these Southerners who took that embarrassing L, in their mind, is up and it's stuck. So it has nothing to do with how dark you are. So he's basically saying that they're also using these new blacks to do away with the slave narrative because every so often when we deal with white society in any capacity, we got to talk about the legacy of slavery, okay? And we got to remind them of their guilt. But with these new blacks, they can talk to them, and the legacy of slavery will never come up because they never enslaved them, and they were never enslaved by them. So that topic just never comes up. Well, see, talking to us, when we go from rags to riches, we can say, yeah, man, my family, man, we came from nothing, bro. White supremacy held us down, and through all of that, we overcame the obstacles of systemic racism, and look where we are now. The new blacks they don't have that story. So they get to erase the legacy of slavery by replacing us with these new blacks. That's what this video is pretty much. And they damn sure don't have the same kind of animosity as we do towards, racists. So when a racist call us a derogatory name, we crash out because of the history. But a new black, if they're called a name that was preserved for us, they're gonna be like, I'm not that. They're gonna look around like, who? Okay, look at this. But many Black people have no idea that bringing more Caribbeans and Africans will lead to the final demise of the original Black community. What's this?
into a point where we can make the black males that are suffering from this mentality.
I don't know what that is. Oh, I ain't trying to do no Sanchez. And Sanchez been on the internet that long?
So this
Can't play that music.
American-born residents here.
God damn that music, man. Sorry.
In this role, a lot of South Africans were mad.
Okay, so now this is them. This is the hypocrisy. When they played all these roles as black FBAs, right? Dr. King, his wife, and 12 Years a Slave, they play all those roles. It was all good. Now Beyonce is going to play an African. All the Africans came out and said, "Stay in your lane, Beyonce. You know nothing about our history." And we like, "Yep, keep that energy." Look, Beyonce, you have no right to be playing Sarti Bartman. You know nothing about Africa or South Africa. Look at this. If Beyonce dares make a film about Sarah Bartman and stars in it, I will turn to a career in politics and ban her from South Africa. Look at the hate. She don't even know what the Hottentot is. Nah. Look at this. Look at the hate. That's crazy, yo. I'm so glad I didn't skip past that. But he got this music that I can't. So we got Dr. Claude. This music I can't play. So, and Deborah Dickerson on Regarding Obama mentioned that we may need a new name to redefine African Americans in order to avoid confusion. So you see, Tethers? Do you see? You're done. We got receipts. She is back in 2000. She was saying that we need a new name in the early 2000s. We could no longer be called African, African American, Black American. We need something that's 100% exclusive. Okay, something that only speaks about us and our experience and no other quote unquote black in the world. So I'm going to play it. Here we go.
African American, or he is an
Should we
American,
think of a new name for what he is?
We do. We need a new name because
what about
there's
nouveau black?
Or he is an
Should we
American,
think of a new name for what he is?
He is an African American, or he is an
Should we
American,
think of a new name for what he is?
We do. We need a new name because
what about
there's
nouveau black? You know, late to the scene blackness.
Well,
told you. So that's back in 2007, and he's joking because he's probably a jokester, but his audience, she was dead serious. No, he's a different type of African black guy, and we need an all-exclusive name. Okay, so he's repeating. Yeah, I want that white racist again. I want to see what she got to say.
There is the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow laws. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortions, but that's or gays who want to get married to one another. That's what civil rights has become for much of the left. They dropped the blacks after 5 minutes.
Immigrant rights are not civil rights?
No, I think civil rights are for blacks.
So the major problem with the
I'm definitely going to click that.
Undermined and effectively reverses the gains of the civil rights movement. African Americans historically fought for their rights in this country, and what we're seeing is that the same forces that fought so hard to oppress African Americans are now extending their fight to immigrants, and primarily immigrants of color.
The Black Alliance for Just Immigration.
Okay, that sounds some awesome tether babble. Black liberals.
black? Is it African American?
Okay, so here's Professor Kevin Brown.
Term. Is it black? Is it African?
So he's saying, what is the proper term for us? Now, keep in mind, when he started talking, this is early 2000s, if not earlier.
To a certain extent gets to your question about what's the proper term. Is it black? Is it African American? Historically in the United States, there were very few voluntary descendants of Africa who came to the United States. Where the overwhelming majority of us were brought during chattel slavery. However, since the 1960s, we've seen an extraordinary increase in voluntary black immigration into the United States, and this is changing the racial, changing the ethnic ancestry of blacks in the United States. And I want to talk about the implications of that. So I'm going to start with black immigrants. So can you go to the next slide? Okay. In 1970, only 1.1% of the black population was foreign born. This increases to 4.9% in 1990, to 8.8% in 2010, and actually goes up to 10% in 2012. So right now, 1 out of 10 blacks in the United States are foreign born. Indeed, if you just go to New York, a majority of the blacks you see in New York City are actually foreign born. So you're not actually interacting with African Americans, you're interacting with Nigerians, with Ghanaians, with Jamaicans. Their concern is about what's going on in Ghana, what's going on in Nigeria, not the struggles of African Americans. There's some very distinct differences between the cultural identity of black immigrants and the cultural identity of African Americans. Black immigrants immigrate to the United States for the same reason everyone else does. They're optimistic about coming to the United States. Their home culture, or their cultures are indoctrinated into them in their home society, not in the United States. They're not influenced by the history of the struggle against racism in the United States. Indeed, as I indicated earlier, I have been to Africa 10 times, South Africa 4 times. So when I'm in South Africa, I'm a black immigrant in a country with a history of racism of black people who are not my people. So when I'm in South Africa, I don't see myself as connected to the black South Africans. My concern is for my African Americans back home.
FBA does.
And whites interact with me very differently than they interact with native South Africans, black South Africans. There's no history of discrimination against us. We're good friends. We can joke. They don't worry about what they say. I don't worry about what I say. And this is what's going on with black immigrants in the United States as well. They're simply having a very different experience with race than your African Americans. And of course, their percentages are increasing at fairly significant numbers. So all of this seems to suggest that we are really watching some fundamental shifts in the traditional struggle of the African American in the United States, and in some real way.
Was African, Nigerian to be exact, and he was a very good teacher, very intelligent.
I don't know what she's talking about. Let's get to the end of this video. If we don't wake up now and do something, we will have in a near future a huge conflict between African Americans and black. Look, he predicted that thing 10 years ago, and we're having that right now. Most of my show is about tethers, new black tethers calling in, angry at us and what we doing. They want to give us solutions. They want to tell us what we should be doing. They want to tell us about our GDP per capita, like they don't have one back in their homeland. They got all the answers, Sway, for us, and zero for themselves and their homeland. Listen, tethers, listen, if you don't take away anything I said today, just know this. Nobody know white supremacists like we do. Okay. And the one thing about them, they will never, ever, ever respect y'all new blacks as long as you don't make any attempts to go fix your homeland. They will never, ever, ever respect freeloaders. You did nothing to build this country. Zero. They know that. And they know what we did, our contributions. They will never, ever respect y'all freeloaders. Okay.